should be a great show. Court McGee and Claudio Silva. I mean, these are two guys that are 100% on the hot seat. I think Claudio Silva is a bit more on the hot seat just because the style of fight that he kind of showed against James Krause to me was a little bit tiresome. I think that James Krause proved to obviously be the more technical fighter. He was able to dictate exactly where he wanted to keep that fight. He knew that getting out of that first round was key, and he did just that. Claudio Silva is obviously a great first-round fighter for the most part, and the guy owns a decision win over Leon Edwards, which is pretty insane. And he also started his UFC career at 5-0. That's pretty massive when you think about it. But again, I do believe that he is a start fast and then diminish type of fighter, but he's got those jiu-jitsu lungs that kind of keep him in the fight a little bit. But I think James Krause exposed him quite a bit. I think there was obvious areas for him to work on, especially with the gas tank and being able to keep it on the feet and stay technical. James Krause just looked like a different animal in there. Now we go into Court McGee. When you think about his 0-3 record, I mean, the big thing for me was in the Carlos Condit fight, he chose to stand and fight with one of the best technical strikers the welterweight division's ever seen. I think that was a really, really interesting call on his part. And by the time he kind of went for the takedowns, I think he'd already taken enough damage. He looked like he was slowed down a little bit. That was the part that I kind of, felt bad in that circumstance, because I felt like, obviously, it's really easy to say just get in there and get a takedown, but at the same time, it looked like Court McGee was very much interested in trying to stand and bang with Carlos Condit. And I mean, everyone wants to go for a knockout. Everybody kind of wants those finishes, but at the same time, a big win over a guy like Carlos Condit could have really kind of shifted your MMA career. And the best game plan against a guy like Carlos Condit is 100% trying to get it to the ground. And that Carlos Condit's been working on that for the most part in the later part of his career. He's been a great striker forever. So that's where I was kind of surprised in his last fight. But interestingly enough, raise your hand if you got a split decision win over Robert Whittaker, because that guy does. Yes, sir. So, in terms of just overall experience, that's what I really like about Court McGee. I think he's able to do battle with almost anybody. It's just about kind of getting him out of there, and he's a tough guy to finish. So when you consider energy-wise and what both guys kind of look like, unless Claudio Silva is able to really get this guy, up against the fence and get to the ground, I think Court's able to handle a lot of what he brings on the feet. Court McGee's got good chin and he's got great durability. Maybe that beard keeps him in check for the most part, but in all these fights, I think that he's just shown that he can always stand and bang, right? The guy hasn't been finished since Ponzinibbio in 2016. Everything else has gone to decisions. So even when you look at the losses, Carlos Condit, Sean Brady, who I think is a top 5 welterweight in the making, Diego Lima, Sean Strickland, and Ben Saunders, that's insane to me. For me, Court McGee is 100% one of those guys that is a perennial, on the outside looking in of the top 10, top 15, but he's still that good of a fighter, which puts him around that top 20, top 25, because in this fight, he's going to be taking on someone that I believe is more realistically in that level, despite the early parts of his career. I think there is a massive shift in what he's looked like in the recent fights, and Court McGee can expose that. I think that he's been good everywhere, right? That's the best part of his game, is that he's shown success everywhere. Now, game plan perspective and things like that, he needs to use big kicks, man. I think kicks against a guy like Claudio Silva, attacking the body, get him as tired as quickly as possible, get this guy's lungs done, because I think that when things get slippery, when things are, a little bit harder to land, you're kind of dictating most of the offense from that point on, right? I think that if Court's utilized a lot of his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu over the course of his career, I mean, it's pretty impressive to see what he's been able to do, especially with that all-around MMA type of mentality. So to see the difference there, I mean, I don't think that he's going to be able to put on a similar performance as James Krause, but I think that trajectory-wise, you might actually see a surprise performance from Court McGee here. Now, in retrospect, do I believe that, I'm talking about him like he should be a massive favorite? I don't think so. I just think it's stylistically, this is a very winnable fight for him. Now, on the flip side, Claudio Silva needs to manage that energy, right? I think he needs to get in, work some good power shots, and also maybe get some body shots in with Court McGee. But I think that is a little bit more damaging to him, because Court McGee's shown that he can take a good beating, right? And that's where Claudio Silva needs to be a little bit smarter with his punches, a little bit smarter with his power. Choose your takedowns wisely. Try to push him up against the fence with good punches and good combos, even if it's feints and fakes and all that kind of stuff. At least you're getting it closer to a position where you can kind of execute your game plan. And I think for Claudio Silva, who is primarily a first-round fighter, taking too much damage in the first round and not being able to find good timing in areas where you can get this fight up against the fence or to the ground and at least try and work a submission or some ground and pound in, even if you can't finish him, a good 3 rounds of that should be able to get you the win. The best part about a guy like Claudio Silva is he could maybe win the first 2 rounds and then just give up the first round, or the third round and not get finished, right? Some of those kinds of fighters have definitely found success in doing that, and he could be one of those. So Court McGee needs to do everything he can to not get finished in the first round and maybe even steal it, because in those next 2 rounds, he's definitely going with a big advantage. So let's take a look at these lines, because this is a fight that I truly believe can go either way. And plus 130 for Court McGee and minus 150 for Claudio Silva's openers. And I mean, that moved pretty much dead even, right? Across the board, you're seeing anything between minus 105, minus 150. And I think that's actually pretty simple for both guys. It's just a really tough fight to call, because I think that first round is going to dictate everything. If Claudio Silva can't get that finish, if he can't, get it to the ground or even land some big shots to rock Court McGee to then work in a takedown, it's going to be a long fight for him. And I think Court McGee's been enough, try tested and true type battles for him to really prove what he's worth. And then that's where you can see the line, right? It's interesting to see that he opened as the dog at plus 130, but I think that he more than deserves to be an even, coin flip on this one. And I think that would be my pick on this fight. I think that from what I've seen in Claudio Silva, it's just really tough to go against a guy like Court McGee, who has been able to kind of be in there with almost anybody, despite getting dominated and maybe some fights. It's just, this isn't the Carlos Condits of MMA, the Sean Brady's of MMA, the Sean Strickland's of MMA. I think that's where you're going to be able to see a bit of a difference. He is a little bit older now, but at 36 versus another 38-year-old, finally Court McGee might be able to get himself a nice little win in the UFC in 2021. So I'm going to ride with him. Maybe it's the heart, maybe I'm biased to some of my old tough boys, but Court McGee, that's going to be my pick. Probably going to make that one right now. If anything changes, you'll see it on my card. Don't forget Instagram. You can see that full picks for the entire card by Saturday afternoon. Fights are early, so I'll make sure to get that up before lunch. Moving on.